Okay, so we are discussing the tutorial discussion question over here, coming from the previous topic on altruism aggression. We are referring to the case, a real case example of a person by the name of Kitty Genovese in 1964. She was knifed to death, and the whole incident took about 35 minutes, and there were 38 eyewitnesses or witnesses who saw the murder, but none of them came to help the victim, nor did any one of them call the police. So we are now trying to discuss the question, why is it that none of these 38 people did anything? And try to imagine, what would you do if you were there? Okay, so I've seen a few answers now from some of you. I think I can refresh the page, show you have more answers already. For those of you who just joined the class, so please put your input or answer to the discussion tutorial, to the tutorial discussion on open learning here. This is under topic 7, tutorial discussion, topic 7, altruism, tutorial discussion. So posting your answers and comments over here would be the reference for your attendance for today. All right, so we saw a couple of responses over here about some of you imagining that you would either call the police or you would try to get others who were there in the event to help you to come together to the aid or try to help save the victim. So that's a nice thing to think about. Now this is from, I hope you don't mind. This is an open discussion, so even if I share your opinion over here, it doesn't mean uh, it's not trying to violate your privacy over here. So please, I hope you guys are okay with this. Yeah, so we call the police anonymously, moving away from the crime scene to make the phone call. All right. Yeah, it could be. I think the possible scenario is that the murderer could be someone who is very influential or someone you feel that probably is threatening to the point that you feel you don't want to get involved, in which case you feel if you do or if you did, then the person may target you next. So that is a valid concern. I have to say, it's not that easy for us to, all of us to, or any one of us to assume that, you know, in this situation, I definitely will come to help the person, the victim, right? Because depending on who the person who is the criminal over here or the perpetrator over here, if that person is someone of a certain intimidating large stature, so you may not necessarily want to intervene because you are afraid of endangering your own life, isn't it? So I think that's quite common sense also. Right, yeah, as stated over here, Woon Guan says, I think it is because there are 38 people who are afraid becoming the next person to be killed. Right, so I think, as stated over here, I think it's a nice acknowledgement that you don't think that you have the courage to actually confront the murderer yourself, but you would probably call the police. I think many of you over here also believe that you would try and call the police. Um, Now, this is the point that probably I may want um, at least maybe one of you to maybe either in the chat feature or if you want to speak also you can try and share with us. I think there are, because there are few of you now have used the word that the situation looked rather ambiguous or was not so clear. What do you mean by that? What exactly about that situation that you find to be ambiguous? Anyone? All right, Yang Jingjing over here said you're afraid of provoking the gangster. Now you are, I'm sorry to just point this out. We don't know whether that person looks like a gangster or is indeed a gangster. But then, of course, you know, you can probably assume based on certain appearance or style of the person that you can perhaps make the assumption that the person is a gangster or someone who belongs to a certain dangerous group or has a certain set of special skills, right? That can threaten or intimidate you. So because of that, you don't want to get involved. But then we know about this before. I showed you a video of social experiment that was done about perception of people based on their appearance. So even if someone has a full body tattoo all over his body, uh, and looks very intimidating, but that person could actually be someone who is very gentle and someone who is actually involved in professions or activities that you may consider to be feminine. But in terms of his style and appearance, as far as body art tattoo is concerned, it's just his passion, huh, for one reason or the other. So you can't really assume very certainly just based on a person's appearance whether that person is indeed a gangster. Uh, Personally, based on what I've read and a few cases also that I've read through a bit more of the private details, sometimes when it comes to some of the most serious crimes that you have in the world, over here in Malaysia, when it comes to cases of serial rapists and child abusers, they look very normal. They look very smart. They look very proper, very prim and proper. So you really could not have assumed or could not have guessed that this person is actually a serial sexual offender or sex offender, sorry, and then also someone who is involved in some of the most heinous crimes that you can ever imagine. So looks can be deceiving. So sometimes you have to be a bit more careful when it comes to passing judgment based on that. Okay, so refreshing to see a few more references or response from all of you. Let's see maybe if there are any more interesting points that we can share. All right, everyone was too afraid. Yeah, I think most of you would come to the conclusion or the analysis that most people did not get involved, or all of them did not get involved in this case, because they were afraid about the situation. In the sense that you don't want to be to be the next victim, or the person may come and target you after he has finished with the other person. Okay, but I'm still trying to get at least one of you maybe to just write on the chat box uh, when you say, some of you have said that the situation looks rather ambiguous. So ambiguous in what way? How is it then when you are in a situation where you saw someone being knifed multiple times for over 30 minutes? How is that ambiguous? I'm not trying to contradict you in any way. I'm just trying to get some clarification. Indeed, the word that the situation is ambiguous, or the word ambiguity or ambiguous, has been used in situations like this. But rather than giving you the textbook answer to that, but would be nice to hear from you. From what do you think is the ambiguous part over here? All right, so there is one person who shared over here. The murderer might use a different approach, like approaching to Kitty with a friendly way in front of witness, like a psycho. Now, yeah, the ambiguous part can possibly be this, in the sense that you saw the whole thing, but the way it started, it looks like a very friendly kind of interaction between the perpetrator and the victim. So because of that, you may assume that it was not actually a murder, a real murder situation or real murder happening in front of your eyes, but it was in fact some kind of an enactment or some kind of a joke or prank that they were, playing with each other. So that can be possible, right? But depending on how indeed the first interaction between those two individuals was it really at that level that they seem to be very cordial and very friendly, and it's just suddenly one of them took out a knife and started knifing the other person multiple times. Yeah, so that ambiguity can be a bit a rather strange one, but yeah, it's possible, true. Yes, Elisa over here mentions that some people may think that it was just a social experiment. So not really a murder case, but someone was just trying to see or test the reaction of people. So you don't want to fall under that. You may think also, I don't know whether you guys are familiar with the TV programs like Candid Camera, where they do something outrageous, but that outrageous kind of behavior was actually enacted by a group of actors who are part of that TV show. They just want to see how you react to that situation. So probably the ambiguity that you can refer to is in the minds of many people that they thought that this was something very, very unusual. How is it that a murder can happen in a public area in front of many people? This cannot be true because if someone is really a murderer, wants to kill someone, he would plan in such a way that he would target the person or attack the person or confront the person, the victim, in a quiet place where he cannot be seen so that he can get the thing done quickly without any eyewitness whatsoever that can implicate him for the crime. So when something so outrageous happens in public in front of many people, you just thought in your mind that this cannot be true. This must be a prank or some kind of a joke that someone's trying to trying to pull, and they just want to see our reaction to this. They just want us to, one of us to get panic and then call the police or try to attack the perpetrator and be a superhero or a real hero during that time. So because of that, they felt that they don't want to fall under that trap or under that, uh, kind of setup that was done by the TV producer or anyone who was doing this. So true, actually, that can be the case. Yeah, I think hanging over here says that ambiguous in the sense that people couldn't see clearly what was happening at the scene. Now, yeah, true. I think if you, as one or two of you over here have gone through, read through or saw a more detailed documentary or analysis about this real case, you know that even though it's stated in the information over here, there were 38 people who were eyewitness to the murder, but not all of them were in fact very close or very near, or none of them in fact are that near to the victim and the perpetrator. The closest person, correct me if I'm wrong, those of you who have seen the documentary, the closest person or eyewitness in that event was a good 5 to 10 meters away from the person, from the event. So even though that's near, uh, but probably not near enough for you to see clearly what was really happening. But again, right, um, when you imagine things a bit more, this person was knifed multiple times for over 30 minutes. I'm sure in doing so, the whole crime scene would be very messy, bloody, right? Probably blood would be, you can imagine how it is, right? Uh, I don't have to imagine how things to you, right? You can just imagine in your head. It would be very messy. So it's again probably because it's too messy, right, too bloody that you find it to be totally outrageous, totally unbelievable. All right, so those are all good points for us to mention. Definitely, uh, there's no 100% real answer to this, to be fair. However, in social psychology, this has often been used as a case example of a certain phenomenon in relation to helping behavior or pro-social behavior. So this is more of an analysis why people don't go and help. So this is factors or barriers against helping others or against pro-social behavior. So ambiguity, not believing that you can help the situation physically yourself, right? So all of that are true. So all of that are valid. But one particular socio-psychological process that is often referred to explain this is as stated over here by Eugene. Where is Eugene? It's actually, no, one other person also, Zishan over here, so said the answer, has stated correctly the answer from social psychology. I'm not saying that this is the only answer to explain the whole case. Bystander effect, right? So the bystander effect basically says that people are less likely to intervene or help victims as they all have the mind that if there are others on site, they didn't want to get involved, others will help the victim. So you can read through again. The explanation given by Zishan over here is clear enough. It's enough to explain what bystander effect means. It's basically the kind of situation of thinking where you feel that because there are many other people around the area or witnessing the same thing, you feel that one of them will go and help the person or the victim. Not so you don't have to go, so it's fine, right? It's fine for you not to get involved because there are others who are bigger, stronger, will try and help the person. You know, even when it comes to the point that we mentioned about none of them calling the police, um, of the 38 people over here, also based on the interview that was done by the police on all these eyewitnesses later on, many of them, not to say all of them, but many of them said that they assume uh, at least some of the people around the area, around the place, would have called the police. So I don't need to call again. Right? So why do I need to call? I'm sure there are others who have already called. So I just, stand here and hide myself or just watch or walk away. Right? So it sounds to be rather pathetic in terms of the excuse being given, but this is actually a real thing. Uh, Based on not just this case, but other cases as well, uh, to the point that social psychologists now believe and have basically hypothesized, although there are some people who may criticize the validity of all this of this conclusion overall or universally, but the general conclusion is this: if you were to be a victim of any crime, especially in public, that you are being mugged or being robbed or being knifed like this, more likely you will get help if the person who is the if the eyewitness who is available in that area in that event was only one person rather than many persons. Again, I repeat, so you are more likely to get help in a dangerous situation where you are being attacked or anything when there is only one person, other person in that area or who saw this, rather than many people. Because when you have many people, the likelihood of bystander effect is actually more, in the sense that there are most of these people would think that, yeah, there are many people around here, I'm sure one of them will call the police, I'm sure one of them will try and help, so I don't need to bother to get involved. But when there is only one person or maybe like very few people, right, in that who saw the event or saw the incident, they are more likely to help because they realize they are the only one who are there. So they internalize the responsibility or sense of responsibility that I need to do something and help. Whereas when there are many people, there is this diffusion, another word that is used or term that we use in social psychology to explain this is diffusion of responsibility. You diffuse the responsibility to everyone else and not to yourself. So that comes from bystander effect. So you don't see that this as something that you should take personal responsibility for because there are others around the area. So they will do it, right? So you tend to also sometimes justify to yourself, if I were to get involved or if I were to call the police, I would just make things confusing. The police will be receiving multiple calls, and then the operator line will get busy. So I don't want to prevent that. So let someone deal with this. I don't need to get involved. So this is in a way a funny thing about human behavior. You would assume, probably based on common sense, that there are many people around in an area where you are having trouble or in an incident where you're having trouble. When there are many people around, they are more likely to get help. But the reality is the other way around. When there are fewer people, only then it's actually the likelihood is actually higher that you will get help. We can see this also, and I've actually seen some related statistics over here in Malaysia when it comes to car breaking down in a highway or in any roads in around the country. So if your car breaks down in a busy highway, it's not likely you will get help instantly, because people will just go past through and assume someone will help that guy. It's okay, right? So you don't stop and help. But if your car breaks down in a rather quiet road in a rural area, if you were to imagine, right? So not many cars would pass through. So if car breaks down over there, most likely, right, the first car that comes past, or the first vehicle that when past the area will stop, because that person realized that this area not many cars, so I need to try and see what's going on and try and help. So that's basically the way that we explain this. Now, in this case of Kitty Genovese, you actually can read also another case similar to this of an actress in the 1980s by the name of Teresa Saldana. Teresa Saldana was, I believe at that point in the early 80s, was an upcoming young actress who was gaining some attention from big producers and movie directors. So she was living in an area in the outskirts of Hollywood, I believe, in LA, Los Angeles. And the interesting thing about the case was even though she kept private information about her background in terms of her home address and so on, there was an incident where one of her rather extreme, fans, right, a guy, call his or her family home, her family house, talk to her mother and ask for the address, uh, by inventing this story that he was calling on behalf of a certain famous director. They're thinking about casting Teresa Saldana in the next big film or something. So the mother got excited and then gave the address, his daughter's home address, to this person. So this person later on confronted Teresa Saldana in front of her house, which is an area. She wasn't at that time someone who was very, very rich, living in a big mansion, but it was a rather close area. No, it's a rather dense area, neighborhood area. There are neighbors around, families living around the area. So this incident happened in one morning when she was getting out from the house, getting into her car, and the perpetrator came to attack her, right, while she was standing next to her car, knifed her also multiple times. Now there are neighbors. There were neighbors around there. It was quite a peak hour time during the day, early in the morning. People were going to work, sending their kids to school and so on. So there were again multiple witnesses who saw what happened. Interestingly, and as probably some of you would imagine, if you put things together over here, you connect things together over here, Teresa Saldana, I mentioned to you just now, was an actress. So when she was attacked by someone in broad daylight, and the person knifed her multiple times, she cried for help, but her neighbors, right, knowing they knew that Teresa Saldana is an actress, many of them later on reported to the police that they thought Teresa was actually acting a scene in some kind of movie or some kind of production, right? They were assuming things that maybe the camera was hidden somewhere, or it was zoom out from a certain further area from a distance. So it's really something that is again pointing to a clear example of bystander effect. That again, people assume that it's over here. In this case, it's ambiguous, like maybe it's a movie scene, but also some of those who felt that something wrong about this because she's crying in pain. It seems to be very genuine, so they didn't help because they thought they saw none of them are helping. So they thought that, maybe even if it's really something which is really serious or really real, I'm sure I'm sure one of them should have or could have called the police already. But as you can imagine further, there are some of these people who witnessed the event actually thought that Teresa Sadana was acting in a scene and she was really performing the scene very well. She appeared to be like really, really in pain. And it seems that real blood was coming out from her body when the person was attacking her. They thought really that it was such a good performance. In fact, I believe there were a few eyewitness around the neighborhood who actually even clapped at some point during the whole incident because they thought it was really an acting performance. So, um, in a way, two things we can conclude over here. Number one, and this is something that maybe some of you can respond also on the chat over here to give your reaction to what I'm going to say. I feel when you have situations or cases like this, even though they are very rare, they are the exceptions, true, they are not the rule, but still it involves serious injuries. And in the case of Kitty Genovese, she lost her life. She died, isn't it? She died. So I'm sure also this was not the first or the only isolated case that happened in the past. I'm sure there are a few more, but still, I can see that it's not something that is very common. Still, because it involves the loss of lives, I believe that is most important, more than anything else, preserving life or protecting life. So because of that, I feel TV programs like Candid Camera should be banned, or there must be really some form of screening, as in some kind of um, uh, censorship, filtering of the plans or the setup of the prank, right? The prank, right? Whatever that you want to do, it must be something that is checked by a certain authority, so that it doesn't become too elaborate to the point that it becomes potentially physically dangerous to anyone. But what do you think? Right? Do you think candid camera or TV programs like that? Australia, I think there was a famous Australia TV candid camera program that used to air over here in Malaysia. So I can't remember the name, but candid camera, right? So basically, you are, they they act a certain scene, they have these actors being involved, and then your reaction, you become panic or you become extremely, anxious, right? So it becomes that becomes the attraction. Uh, Basically, this is one of the pioneer example of real life television show that existed many years ago. Now, of course, I think you have many prank uh, programs or social media content that people do or people run against each other, or in different situations. I can see the fun or the positive side of that, or even the educational part of that when it comes to maybe uh, uh, doing events or skits that are of a certain just based on conversations and jokes that you make, or prank that you make based on information that you say, verbal pranks basically with some kind of action. But anything that is too elaborate to the point that it can endanger anyone's physical health or physical condition, I think should not be allowed to run through, because there is potentially a danger to that. Okay. So there's one student over here who said that he actually saw a full fledged documentary about this. So Eugene, so let me see what Eugene says. Although the number of witnesses was later revealed to be an overestimate the number of persons who were aware, okay, the attack continued its bystander effect. When other people are around, this term alludes an inclination to be less likely to help. Okay, that's what I mentioned. Bystander intervention is more likely when a scenario is regarded to be extremely scary or unexpected, right? So indeed, this is an example of something that is clearly unexpected. So group participation is another element that contributes to the severity of bystander effect. In other words, while the effect grows as the amount of onlookers rises, when the victim belongs to the same group as the bystander, they are often more inclined to respond, right? So this is a nice point. Last point over here. You are more likely to help someone who looks like you. Okay, that is actually something that is in a way quite sad, but it's true. Uh, Points to a bit on the rather subconscious level of our prejudice, and dare I say, a bit of racist thinking that we have. We are more likely to help people who are more like us rather than those who are different. And that actually also covers along racial lines, right? And this is not only when it comes to events or situations, extreme situations like this. This covers also examples of situations as we are now observing in our society because of the COVID-19 pandemic, of the EMCO, loss of jobs, and so on. Right? You can see that if you were to do an observation, um, people are more likely to help others who are similar like you, same religion, same ethnicity, but it's something nice to see, definitely, that there are more and more people who are breaking this line of thinking. In the example of, I'm not going to touch upon examples of politicians, even though many of them or some of them are probably those that you very respect, and I think you ought to. We, myself included, we ought to respect them for what they are doing. People like Said Sadiq and others, I think they are doing a very good job. It's just that I have a bit of maybe my own prejudice when it comes to politicians. Whatever they do, I don't see that they are really sincere about doing that. So I like more the examples of people who are helping others without any frills, without any coverage, without any social media posting and so on. They just help, and they don't care about getting any credit for doing so. So you have quite a number of people who have done that or are doing that still, and I think these are the examples that we ought to emulate and really respect. These are the true Malaysian heroes, as I often like to say. All right, so the bystander effect, something that we can all overcome. Get to know your neighbors, keep an eye. All right, so this is more of an example, advice in terms of how you can avoid probably falling under the effect of bystander effect. Um, but if I may ask, how many of you, can any one of you sit over here share any examples where you have actually stopped in the middle of the road or highway and helped someone whose car broke down, or when an accident happened? Has any one of you done that? Interesting. All right. So one of you over here mentioned I helped someone who got harassed by a mud rempit. Now, for those of you who do not know what is mud rempit refers to, mud rempit refers to motorcycle riders who are riding in a very high speed, and they often race illegally on roads, not just highways, but any roads basically, especially at night. Right. So you do find some of these, mud rampage, and for the lack of better term, you're not referring to be using this term because of its popular usage. So some of them can be very intimidating in the sense that if you were to drive slow, and they feel that you are actually hindering them from getting past you, so that because they are racing against others, right, with others in a public road, right, not in a racetrack. So when you have to maneuver around cars that are driving normally, right, on the road, and you are trying to race against others, so you find certain cars are maybe driving a bit slow, especially those who are driving on the right lane, but driving not fast enough according to them. So they find that to be very annoying. So they may actually bully you to the point of they follow you or they shout abusive words against you. So that can be something that's not nice, definitely, right? Yeah. Would I advise you to get involved in that situation? Uh, Probably not, right? So I think the point that is mentioned by many of you over here about the fear or the awareness, right, about not wanting to get yourself involved or endangering yourself potentially is a valid concern that all of us should have and should keep. In a manner of speaking, you ought to pick your battles correctly and wisely, and don't get involved in events where you know clearly the odds are very much against you. So you would rather, so you should, right, rather than getting involved personally, you should try and get others to help, right? Of course, the best would be to try and get the police to come to the uh, to the to the crime scene, or to the incident, right, to the scene of the incident, and let them solve the problem. But there are times when you are in a situation where some immediate, urgent response is required. So because of that, requires a bit of a judgment call on your part. For me personally, what I've done once was actually this. There was someone that I saw, someone I heard basically on the bus stop, in the public bus stop, was asking for help. She had one of her friends, a female friend also, who was almost like lying on her lap. She looked very ill. So this friend who was holding so her friend who was holding her was trying to get people in the bus stop to try and help her, to bring her to the clinic, to bring the friend to the clinic. But there were many people in the bus stop, but none of them responded. So for one reason or the other, I decided to help. I actually carried the lady. It's a young lady, probably is, yeah, probably it's a young adult, but still an adult. I dare not assume how much she weighs, but it's a adult, female person. So I did carry her on my hands, right, for about, maybe about 100 meters or so, right, to the nearby clinic. Um, a detail that maybe I should share, that maybe would change your view a bit about why people did not help, or most people did not help, was that both of these girls were dressed in a rather, in a certain way that may be assumed to be indicative that they are not necessarily people who are involved in good businesses. I know, how should I say this? The two girls were basically dressed in a certain, yeah, I what's the political correct word to use this? But yeah, the word basically is, in a certain sexy way, right? They were both wearing very short mini skirts and something like that. Uh, but then still, to me, I felt that, seems to be a situation where someone needs to help them. um, and I think it's not fair to just simply let them be like that, because it was certainly a situation where some urgent help was needed, or assistance was needed. So that was basically something that I have done. I've probably stopped also once or twice on the roadside, to see accidents, um, or when I saw someone, the car broke down. Um, yeah, in most situation, uh, especially nowadays, it's enough for you to help by just borrowing them your phone, or calling someone to come and help them. So I think it's something that all of us should keep in mind. Not getting involved at all because of whatever fear or assumption of ambiguity, I think is not right. I won't say it's wrong, but I would say it's not right. So you should try and help, offer your help by simply, offering to call someone else to come and help, right? Someone else with the proper, maybe skills and ability to come and solve the problem, either the police, or maybe a nearby mechanic, or a tow truck, right? So that will be it, right? Or just stop by and say, and just ask, abang okay tak? Right, everything okay not? Brother, you okay or not? It's just that. So I think that's good enough for you to try and get involved, and I can assure you, in doing so, you will feel nice, you will feel good um, about the whole situation. And I think also you will make the person feel a bit more, not to say cheerful, but at least feel a bit more, uh, not to say content, but feel nice that someone has stopped and asked to help them.